No, I think you're absolutely right. I think most of the work is really done prior the real meetings. I think what we are seeing here now is really people coming together and trying to understand how can things be done. So all the ideas are on the table. I think all the ideas are known and get a lot of support. But now the question is, how do we actually move over the next 1 to 3 years? And that's really the focus. What can each individual country, what can each individual business do to make things happen?
What is your impression of how the agenda of the forum has changed, minding that, okay, last year's event was dominated by the fact that there was the world economic crisis, there were the new realities, the obstacles for the world's economies to be overtaken. Now that we understand the crisis is over, what are the new challenges? What are today's challenges?
I think what we see is that there's always a crisis around the corner. So what we see, there's much more volatility in the markets and in the world these days. So one of the big challenges, how do we make sure that we have more resilience in economies and also in the individual business? I think it's one of the key points people are interested in, people are discussing. I think the other point is, how do we make sure that we get back to growth, and how do we make sure that we actually develop something that's sustainable, not for our generations, but also for the future generations. And there we talk modern infrastructure, we talk about smart infrastructure, we talk education, and we talk about making this really one world with one approach. I think that's really at the core at the moment. It's how do we get back to sustainable growth? It's about the real sector, real assets, and less about, I think, investment into financial instruments.
What's your attitude towards the so-called de-offshorization policies? That's the subject extensively discussed, which had been discussed previously at the G8 summit. We expect that it will be, of course, discussed during the St. Petersburg Economic Forum. Is there any change coming with Russia joining in to exchange financial information about its bank clients? Does this make a difference?
No, I think it does make a difference from the perspective of we need a new deal between the businesses, the governments and individuals and actually people living in the countries. I think what we've seen developing in the West is very much a rule-based model where actually as long as you stick to the rules, you could be sure as a corporation or as an individual that you're on the safe side. I think that's changing a little bit. People, politicians and populations are expecting more. They're not only expecting you to stick to the rules, they are also expecting you to behave ethnical and to buy into something which is called a social society. And I think that's the big change. I think what we see at the moment is the discussion of a new global social contract.
On the whole, Stefan, how would you evaluate Russia's current investment climate?
I think it's very difficult to talk the investment climate in Russia itself. It's just a very, very wide area. So if we look at different stakeholders, what we see are people who are already invested here, and they are very, very positive. They're here because of the growth in the market, not because of the resources, and they see very good developments. We talk about people who have recently started coming here. Today we heard a presentation from One Equity Partners, one of the global leading private equity teams, saying they were so positively surprised how easy it is to make deals in this relationship-driven economy, that they are very positive of making more investment. So all the people on the ground are relatively positive. If you, on the other hand, look at the people who haven't been here, who just observe Russia from the outside, I think it's a very different picture. And there we see people very positive being able to make profits, but very concerned about the ability to expatriate profit. And I think that's something the government needs to work on, is making sure that investors understand that they can expatriate profit they make here.
Well, St. Petersburg, of course, is drawing scores of business leaders to a forum where they're hoping to get the latest tips on the course that the government and major companies might take. Vladimir Putin, as it had been said before, will be meeting with the chiefs of the Russian Direct Investment Fund and major global investment funds on Friday. I would like to ask you, are you hoping to get any tips on the course that the government will be taking from Vladimir Putin, or Russia's economic policy is clear and transparent and quite predictable?
I think it's probably not as clear as it should be, in particular not abroad. What we see from the investors being active here, I think we see a clear way forward. We see focus on building SMEs around the large state corporations. We see a fund like RDIF enabling actually international experienced financial investors coming into Russia. So we see this slow opening up of Russia towards the international investor community. What I understand, though, is that we just recently traveled the world, being to Frankfurt, to London, to all the international financial hubs. I think it's very much unknown what's happening. So I think there's a lot of communication to be done. And maybe that's also something we can learn from the past, is as soon as you stop communicating, as soon as if you're not out there, people come up with their own thoughts and interpretation. I think that's just very bad at the moment for Russia, that people don't get the real insight. So we need to be out there and communicate.